and welcome to this live broadcast of the Senate proceedings. This being the afternoon of the March 10th, the year is 2022, with a lot lined up before the floor this afternoon. And this broadcast is brought to you courtesy of the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit, and this is in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. A total of 3 bills will be read for the first time before the floor. And to just mention, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill, a bill from the National Assembly, Bill number 32 of the year 2021. The Circle Societies Amendment Bill, and the Sustainable Waste Management Bill, Bill number 22 of the year 2021, are some of the bills that will be tabled by the Senate Majority Leader. After tabling of those particular bills, the Landlord and Tenant Bill is a bill that the Senate will be resuming debate on. And this particular debate on the Landlord and Tenant Bill was interrupted on the 23rd of February. After completion of the allocated time for debate, senators will proceed into division to vote on the Landlord and Tenants Bill. The Committee of the Whole will this afternoon in the Senate consider the intergovernmental relations, this being a bill by the Chairperson Standing Committee on Matters Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. The Committee of the Whole will also be considering the Law of Succession Amendment Bill and the Preservation of Human Dignity and Enforcement of Economic as well as Social Rights Bill, this being a bill by nominated Senator Abshiro Halake, Bill number 21 of the year 2021. The Chairperson Sessional Committee on the Public Accounts and Investment will be moving a motion, and the motion is on the adoption of the reports of the Sessional Committee of the reports and consideration by the Auditor General for the financial statements of various county executives for the financial year 2018-2019. Pursuant to Standing Orders 48, subsection 1, nominated Senator Dr. Isaac Mwaura will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Energy regarding the circumstances surrounding the death of Mr. Felix Odhiambo, who happens to be a resident of Githurai Estate and who died from an electrocution. The Senate Majority Leader will, pursuant to Standing Orders 52, subsection 1, issue a statement on the business of the Senate for the coming week commencing on the 22nd of March 2022. The Speaker of the Senate is expected to communicate to the House in regard to messages from the National Assembly. To just highlight some of the communication will be on the passage of the National Assembly of the National Disaster Management Authority Bill, this being Bill number 10 of the year 2019. Similarly, the communication from the Chair will also delve in the National Assembly the passage of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposals Amendment Bill, this being Bill number 32 of the year 2021. Another message from the National Assembly pertains the Circle Societies Amendment Bill, and finally the National Assembly Sustainable Waste Management Bill, this being a Bill number 22 of the year 2021. A couple of elections campaign management bills are also lined up for debate as they are in the second reading stage. The first bill is the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, Bill number 51 by Senator for Narok County. Another bill by Senator for Narok is the Elections Amendment Bill number 2, Senate Bill number 43 of the year 2021. The House will equally be having a look and deliberating on the Persons with Disabilities Amendment Bill, a bill by Senator Aaron Cheriot and Senator Dr. Isaac Mwaura. This is a bill from the Senate, bill number 29 of the year 2020. The Cotton Industry Development Bill, bill number 55 of the year 2021, by the Chairperson Standing Committee on Matters Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, is also another bill before the floor this afternoon. The Senator for Laikipia County, Senator Francis Kinyua, is the Speaker presiding over the business this afternoon. I'm now handing you over for the live broadcast. My name is Gladys Mungai. Enjoy your...
Honorable Senators, let's pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor and blessings as your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership position in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages.
Honorable Senators, we have some messages, and I start with the passage of SACCO Society Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2021. Honorable Senators, I wish to report to Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 41.3, I have received the following message from the Speaker of National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the SACCO Societies Amendment Bill, National Bill number 55 of 2021. Pursuant to the said standing order, I now report the message pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 42 of the National Assembly Standing Orders. I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the SACCO Society Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2021 was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 218 of 26 November 2021 as a bill concerning county government in terms of Article 110.4 of the Constitution, seeking to amend the SACCO Society Act number 14 of 2008 to, among other things, provide for the usage of information communication technology in collecting and receiving statutory reports with a view to reducing the regulatory reporting burden on SACCOs and ensuring a faster, efficient, and accurate reporting, monitoring, and analysis of SACCO financial status at any time being the cornerstone of risk-based supervision, RBS. And whereas the National Assembly considered and passed the said bill on Thursday, 17th February 2022 without amendments in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provision of Article 110(4) of the Constitution and Standing Order 41(1) and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the National Assembly's decision to the bill to the Senate for concurrence. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 157, which requires that a bill originating in the National Assembly be preceded by the Senate in the same manner as a bill introduced in the Senate by way of first reading in accordance with the Standing Order 139, I will at the appropriate time during the sitting call upon the clerk to read the said bill a first time. Thank you. Honorable Senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 41(3), I have received the following message from the Speaker of National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 32 of 2021. Pursuant to the same standing order, I now report the message pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 41(1) and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 32 of 2021, was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 121 of 11th June 2021 as a bill to proposing to amend the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act to address the challenges faced by procurement entities in implementing the Act, including the multiple award of contracts. And whereas the National Assembly considered the said bill on Thursday 17th, 2022 and passed it on Tuesday 22nd February 2022 with amendments in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution and Standing Order 41(1) and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the National Assembly's decision on the bill to the Senate. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 157, which requires that a bill originating in the National Assembly be proceeded with by the Senate in the same manner as bill introduced in the Senate by way of first reading in accordance with the Standing Order 139. I will at the appropriate time during the sitting call upon the clerk to read the said bill a first time. I thank you. Honorable Senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 41(3) and 4, I have received the following message from the Speaker of National Assembly regarding the passage of the Sustained Waste Management Bill, National Assembly Bill number 22 of 2021. Pursuant to the said standing order, I now report the message pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41(1) and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Order. I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the Sustained Waste Management Bill, National Assembly Bill number 22 of 2021 was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 92 of 12th May 2021 as a bill to establish the legal and institutional framework for the sustainable management of wastes, ensure the realization of the constitutional provisions on the right to a clean and healthy environment and for connected purposes. And whereas the National Assembly considered and passed the said bill on Wednesday 23rd February 2022 with amendments in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution and Standing Order 41(1) and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 157, which requires that a bill originating in the National Assembly be proceeded with by the Senate in the same manner as bill introduced in the Senate by way of first reading in accordance with the Standing Order 139. I will at appropriate time during the sitting call upon the clerk to read the said bill a first time. I thank you. Honorable Senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 41.3 and 4, I have received the following message from the Speaker of National Assembly, leading the message of National Disaster Management Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 10 of 2019. Pursuant to standing orders, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 41.1 and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whilst the National Disaster Management Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 10 of 2019, was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 17 of 1st March 2019 as a bill concerning county government in terms of Article 110(4) of Constitution, seeking to establish a centralized system of responding to and managing disasters in the country through the establishment of National Disaster Management Authority, which is to be the main body dealing with the disaster management in the country with a view to ensuring better response to disasters and reduced impact of disaster. And whereas the National Assembly considered and passed the said bill on Wednesday, 16 February 2022 with amendments in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution and Standing Order 41.1 and 42 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the National Assembly decision on the bill to the Senate for concurrence. Honorable Senators, Article 110(3) of the Constitution requires that before either House considers a bill, the Speaker of the National Assembly and Senate shall jointly resolve any question to whether it is a bill concerning counties, and if it is, whether it is a special or an ordinary bill. This Constitution provision has not been met with respect to National Disaster Management Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 10 of 2019. As such, the bill ought to be aligned to Article 110(3) of the Constitution, following which the bill will be read a first time in the Senate. Honorable Senator, in view of the foregoing, the National Disaster Management Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 10 of 2019, as received from the National Assembly by the message dated Wednesday, 9th March 2022, will not be proceeded with in the Senate. I thank you. What is out of order, Senator Sakaja?
Fine. Mr. Speaker, thank you for that decision and that communication. Mr. Speaker, the National Disaster Management Authority Bill, if you look at its history, initially originated from this House. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that was sponsored by myself and Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. jointly. In fact, it was a bill that came up after the Solai Dam tragedy, and where we realized there are certain gaps that need to be addressed when it comes to coordination of disasters between the national government and the county government. Mr. Speaker, after having passed, formulated this bill, it was discussed in this House, it was passed, and it was sent to the National Assembly. When they received it, Mr. Speaker, they refused to deal with it, and they plagiarized, such that they now sponsored another version of the same exact bill with the same exact provisions. In fact, initially, the CS of Interior wanted to sponsor our bill. We said we have a right to initiate it, and then I think they gave it to a private member who sponsored it. Mr. Speaker, what I wanted to ask, even without discussing the matters of concurrence, because this is one of those bills that the court ruled needed to be republished, which we republished, and we passed it again in this House, and it went to the National Assembly, is that before dealing with what they have sent, can we get a status of where it has reached in that House? And because we cannot then now start doing our bill again, which has been plagiarized, that even if you look at the publication date, is a much earlier bill. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your firm decision that because of concurrence, we will not look at it, but this is a matter that, Mr. Speaker, I would request. Because we say an eye for an eye, we all lose our sight. Ultimately, Kenyans need this law. And I would ask that if you can, just convene a meeting between yourself and the Speaker of the National Assembly and the sponsors, so that we just agreed on a harmonized version. Our people are really suffering the lack of this bill. When a disaster happens, and I'll give you an example of the many that I have in Nairobi, Gikomba, the fires that are all over there in Mathare, the buildings collapsed. You come and you find all agencies talking at cross purposes, duplicating their work, and nobody does it. It is at a stage that there was a job that anybody could do, but nobody did it because everybody thought that somebody would do it, and nobody ended up doing it. And that has led to loss of lives. So I would ask, even as you have said that it's stepped down waiting for concurrence, that you can converge us. Because at this point, the point has been made. Even if it is us dealing with that one, let's have the law. But just kindly converge us, the sponsors of the original bill, myself and Senator Mutula, as well as Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of the Senate, for us to resolve this at the soonest time possible. But I thank you for that firm decision, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Sakaja. Senator Gertrude Msuruve.
You have made on the floor of this house, and Honorable Speaker, reading the bills for the first time is essential and important so that they go to the next stage. But there are some areas of concern, Honorable Speaker, and as much as you are seeking for concurrence from both houses, there are instances when bills go to the National Assembly and they take too long to be prosecuted, so that there are also concurrence goes on. And it is very important to realize that when bills go through concurrence and they are assented to, then they are able to correct a gap that is there, the challenges that are there. Like, for instance, the procurement bill, it will come in handily to correct the errors that are going on in county governments. So there's need also, Honorable Speaker, to also seek the indulgence, so that when it comes to bills, when they go to the National Assembly, they should be fast-tracked. And the issue of duplication of bills is of big concern, Honorable Speaker. I remember Senator Cheriot and Senator Mwaura developed a bill from this house, the PWD bill, and this bill actually is very important. But again, the National Assembly is coming up with the same bill, and the contents could probably be similar. There's a bill also we developed with the Senator Professor Kamar on special education that is really progressing well. But I hear from here say that the National Assembly also has such a similar bill with sometimes when you look at the contents, they may be similar. So they need to also see how to sort out such issues before before they are brought to this house, so that if there is a similar bill from the National Assembly and the Senate, they need to sit down and see how to merge. But the sponsors of the bills should not, their credit should not come down because of such issues, Honorable Speaker, because I know legislators spend sleepless nights working on bills. So when they are eventually developed, they should actually get the credit that they deserve. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for your communication.
Thank you. Senator Sakaja and Senator Gertrude Msuruve, I heard you. There are many pending issues in terms of bills which have gone to court, and all what I would want to say is that I want to assure you that our substantive speaker will have discussion with his colleague in the National Assembly, so that these issues can be sought amicably. I thank you.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
Senator Mwaura. Statement by Senator Mwaura. Senator Mwaura is online.
I am here. I'm here. I'm online.
Okay.
I'm online.
Proceed, Senator Mwaura, with your statement.
Thank you. Thank you. I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Energy on the circumstances
Senator Mwaura. We have lost Senator Mwaura. Okay. Then, as we try to sort out on Senator Mwaura, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 52-1, I hereby present to the Senate the business of the House for the week commencing Tuesday, 22nd March 2022. Mr. Speaker, as we proceed on a short recess from tomorrow, 11 March 2022, until Monday, 21st March 2022, I wish to commend committees and senators for the commitment that they have shown in processing business before the respective committees of the Senate. Increasingly, more reports on various legislative business have been tabled in the Senate. This notwithstanding, there is need for respective senators to monitor business that they are sponsoring that is listed in the order paper in order to avail themselves to prosecute it when scheduled. Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, 22nd March 2022, the Senate will consider business that will not be concluded from today's order paper, as well as business indicated in the notice paper that has been annexed to the order paper for today. On Wednesday, 23rd March, and on Thursday, 24th March 2022, the Senate will consider business that will not be concluded on Tuesday, and any other business scheduled by the Senate Business Committee, including petitions and statements. Currently, there are 16 bills due for the second reading stage. I urge respective committees to uphold the efficiency that they have demonstrated in considering bills, as we look forward to having many reports on these bills tabled when we resume from recess. Mr. Speaker, currently there are 11 bills due for committee of the whole stage. I take this opportunity to urge committee chairpersons and senators sponsoring the bills to avail themselves so that we can conclude on these bills. This is part of the legislative imprint that this August House will leave, and thus every effort must be made to ensure that we pass those bills in good time. In addition to this, there are 48 petitions that are yet to be concluded in the Senate, and 3 motions respective standing committees are encouraged to expedite consideration of the said petitions and to table reports pursuant to Standing Order 232-2, while the movers of the motions are urged to be in the House when the same is listed in the order paper. Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you and hereby lay the statement on the table of the Senate.
Senator Mwaura. We don't have Senator Mwaura.
dunia bei za vyakula duniani zimefikia kiwango cha juu zaidi katika historia ya miaka 100 tangu kuanzishwa kwa ripoti ya shirika la Umoja wa Mataifa la chakula na kilimo kuhusu bei za na nchini Kenya. Rais Uhuru Kenyatta wa Kenya alitangaza kuanzishwa kwa tuzo ya kimataifa ya amani na mazingira kama sehemu ya sherehe za maadhimisho ya miaka 50 tangu kuanzishwa kwa shirika la Umoja wa Mataifa kuhusu mazingira.
Order number 8, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 32 of 2021, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 9, the Circle Societies Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2021, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Circle Societies Act 2008.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Sustainable Waste Management Bill, National Assembly Bill number 22 of 2021, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to establish the legal and institutional framework for the sustainable management of waste, ensure the realization of the constitutional provision on the right to a clean and healthy environment, and for connected purposes.
Honorable Senators, for the convenience of the House, I want to reorganize the order paper, and we go to order number 26.
Order number 27, motion, fast-tracking cultural developments in counties.
Mover, Senator Kasanga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the motion that whereas Kenya is a multi-ethnic and multiracial country with rich and diverse cultural resources such as traditional medicine and food, arts, craft, music, dances, dress, among others, aware that the Constitution in its preamble acknowledges the cultural diversity of the Kenyan people who are determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation, whilst Article 11 of the Kenyan Constitution recognizes culture as the foundation of the nation, noting that while the Department of Culture under the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage has been playing some of the key roles in promotion of cultural integration, formulation of policies and standards that will guide the development of culture, little information has been available to the Kenyan public. Acknowledging that culture performs a significant role in the life of a child, the cultural background in which a child is brought up affects the totality of his or her life's activities. Concerned that our children are losing their sense of identity due to negative influences, due to inadequate cultural identity, catalyzed by globalization, which has led to catastrophic consequences to the next generation, as experienced in our country, where a majority of the young people are showing symptoms of feeling suicidal, anxious, feeling of hopelessness, anger, violence, feeling isolated, and paranoia. Now, therefore, the state urges the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage to 1, formulate cultural development policies and initiatives to inculcate stronger community values,
safeguard Kenya's heritage, recognize local heroes, and promote sociocultural opportunities in the counties, and B, formulate strategies to create an enabling environment for protection and promotion of diversity of cultural expressions in all counties. Mr. Speaker, this motion, even as I read, really does speak for itself. And there is need almost to reset ourselves and go back to the basics, sometimes when you look at what is happening in our society. Today, I was very privileged to have a panel session at the People's Dialogue, and I have to really thank our very own Senator Halake for her leadership at the CMD. You've done very well. In fact, today, your CEO was saying how happy a CEO he is under your guidance and leadership. And, you know, it was a very interesting dialogue where you mix the leaders and stakeholders and the people and have critical conversations. And of course, as usual, I'm called to speak on anything mental health. And one of the things that came out, and this came out from the people themselves, and they said, why are we always asking government, what have you not done, what have you not done? Why not seek first the solutions from ourselves as a people? What are we doing as a people? What are we doing about the community values we used to have a long time ago that we all grew up with? Probably our, the previous generation is aware of the community values we used to have, where your neighbor matters to you, where your children's neighbor matters to you, where a child belonged to the community and was brought up together with the community. These are the cultural values that we are missing today and we are lacking. And sometimes when we are talking about the adverse effects of even mental health or even behavior, as we saw last week on Friday, what happened to the lady who was assaulted, on the road. When you see some of these behaviors, we have to think to ourselves as a society. We need to go back to our basics. How did we used to deal with some of these things? And the solutions are there. And this motion will speak to all these, encompassing issues of community value. How about promoting our diversity, our cultural expression, Mr. Speaker? Sometimes we are so engrossed in chasing life that we forget some of the most beautiful things are what happened in our culture. And interestingly enough, some still do happen. But they're happening quietly in our different counties, in our different communities, and we're not celebrating enough. Yet some of these things are the very thing that can help bring jobs, that can help bring foreign exchange even to the counties. I remember, about 3 or 4 years ago, being in Shemakoko, in Vihiga, and watching when the young men go into the forest for their circumcision rites, and when they come out, the amount of color and pomp that happens on the streets was absolutely amazing. And I remember thinking, why can't this be an annual thing where even us, when we're in Makueni, we can say, this month we have to go to Shemakoko. And we all, you book rooms and you go there and you celebrate with them as they celebrate the cultural practices that happen, every year. Imagine if we had that level of expression of our culture, where we intermingle, and in the process we are creating jobs, in the process we are entrenching our very own cultural practices to our young people, so that we don't forget these things. They become part and parcel of our lives and enrich us in our modern day scenario. And Mr. Speaker, when we talk about celebrating our heroes, our local heroes, this is also very important, because our local heroes in our communities played very critical roles. And they will remind us certain things about, why they were heroes at that time. And, every community has their heroes. They were their leaders. They did great things. In the turn of the century, they were there to guide, communities as, life was changing at the time when the colonial rule came. And these are things I believe we really must celebrate. And I look forward to a day when, you have these cultural facilities in every county or in every region. If not necessarily every county, at least every region. Like you find Lower Eastern, you'll find a center that will celebrate the culture of the Akamba people. Or you go to the coastal region and you find a center that celebrates people from the coastal region and give their history and give, writings about these people. It's interesting that for us, like the Akamba people, a lot of the writings were done by then, people like Dr. Ludwig Kraft, who had come as missionaries, or they were, the explorers who wrote about us. Not enough by ourselves. And we are saying the time is here that we need to account for our time. Our stories should not be written by other people. Our stories should be written by ourselves, because that is the best way that we can transfer, whether it is knowledge and history and culture, to our younger generation, so that we don't keep saying that our young people are missing something. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is speaking to this, that we need to do, and as usual, the national government in the Ministry of Culture, they need to really pick up on some of these things and give the guidance that is needed. But even the counties, even before even the national government does anything, the counties should be seized of this. And we should begin to see some action in that sense that is happening. Mr. Speaker, I would like to celebrate one of the heroes of the Akamba people. And, the Akamba people are known to have been long-distance walkers. They used to walk. And it is written by one Dr. Ludwig Krapf, how one time when he was in the Congo, he met these interesting people who told him they had come from the east and they had walked for 3 moons. 3 moons, of course, is 3 months. That's how they used to measure the days, those days. And they had gone to the Congo to collect the earth. And they told him, this earth, we use it to make arrows. So the Kamba people were smelters. They used to go and get the iron ore and come back home and make the arrows. And the Kamba people were very good at archery. That was one of our forte. Arching was one of the greatest things we used to do in the older ages. And I wish we could have an archery club now in somewhere in Ukambani, because we have it in our blood. And these are the things we are talking about. If our people knew more about this, then they would know to do these things, So one time, Dr. Ludwig Krapf, according to his book, came back to East Africa to look for these people who had come from the East. And when he landed in Mombasa, he looked for them and he was told, these people come within certain months of harvest, after they harvest, and they come to do trade. And he went back and came back again, so that he can meet with these people. And when he met them, he met with the one Dr. Kivoe wa Mwendwa. This was one of our chiefs. He had led a caravan to Mombasa, where he met with Ludwig Krapf. And he interested in Ludwig Krapf. He said, I know you people. I've met you people in the Congo. And I know you like seeing new things. And he said, there's a place where there are hills that have something white on top. And that white thing becomes water. He was trying to describe snow. And Ludwig Krapf could not believe there is snow in the tropics. Therefore, he decided to travel and see the inside of the country. And he was led by Chief Kivoe. And those days, they would use the routes of Kitui. They would go through Nzambani, if you know Kitui very well. And when they get to a certain spot, you have the views of what we currently call Mount Kenya and Mount Kilimanjaro. And he pointed at the hills. And he gave the Dr. Ludwig Krapf and said, that one there, that one we call it Kenya. In Kikamba, Kenya, that is what they called Mount Kenya. At that time, Kenya, because they were trying to describe an ostrich which has a white little patch on top of their head. And that's what they termed Mount Kenya as. And on the other side, Kiemachanzalo, which is Kilimanjaro, the current day Kilimanjaro. And why they call it Kiemachanzalo, Kiema is a hill, and Cha, of course, off, and Nzalo because it is difficult to climb. So they called it Kiemacha Nzalo. And of course, you can imagine how Ludwig Krapf then went and wrote it at that time. So it's good to know that some of these names actually came from those days, and they came from practical experiences of our own people when they were trying to describe these things. And a lot more went on. Even something like the Yatta Plateau. You'd wonder how the name Yatta came about, and I can tell you. Yatta Plateau, according to this book, Chief Kivoe was trying to explain to Dr. Ludwig Krapf, because he had seen this interesting formation, geographical formation. And he said, that thing, normally when we shoot an animal, it just disappears. You don't even know how it has gone, because the flora and fauna is so flat, and the animals just disappear completely. And they would say in Kikamba, ya ata, I've shot something and it has just disappeared. How did it disappear? Ya ata. Then that ended up being what is called the Yatta Plateau today. So, Mr. Speaker, you can see these things are really interesting. Same as the Athi River, all these, and the Tana River. The Tana River was very interesting because when they needed to cross and go to Mount Kenya, and they came across the Tana River, as they were heading there, Chief Kivoe would say, let's hope that the levels will be low, because sometimes because of the snow, the levels are too high. And when they got to the place where the levels were low enough for them to cross the Tana River, he said, Tana, that is, be happy. In Kikamba, Tana is be happy. Be happy, now we can cross. and that is what today is called the Tana River. So all these stories come from books that are written by not ourselves, but by others. And what I'm saying in this motion today, as we celebrate our cultures, is that we need to write our stories ourselves, and we need these stories to, and all our heroes to be celebrated, and all our culture to be celebrated by putting it in these cultural ways, having the policies in place, having even the places, you know, whether it is the museums or places that can celebrate our culture across the country. And we as Kenyans then have the duty to go around and enjoy each other's diversity. Our diversity need not be the thing that divides us, but rather that puts us together and, you know, helps us even create stronger economies, because we can use our own culture as methods of making money and celebrating each other. And let us look for cultural expressions. We have our own senator here, Senator Olekina, who would come with his traditional regalia. And I thought that was really nice. And I think we should try very hard that we should have at least one day in a week or one day in a month that we can celebrate our cultural expression by even dress wear. In some countries in Africa, you will find even school uniform is a cultural expression that is made from you know, like our kitenge, you know, the modern traditional look, which is a kitenge. You make school uniform out of vitenge, something that helps the children to also feel part and parcel of our culture, of our tradition. So, Mr. Speaker, let me end there and say that it's about time that we write our own stories. So I move the motion, and I request Senator Dr. Musruve to second. Thank you.
Senator Dr. Gertrude Msulove.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to second Senator Kasanga on her motion. And Honorable Speaker, kindly, before I proceed, I just want to thank Senator Kasanga for coming up with this motion. And this motion, Honorable Speaker, is going to effect Article 11 of our Constitution. Honorable Speaker, when we look at our Constitution, Article 11, it brings out the fact that the state shall promote cultural expressions, all forms of cultural expressions. And when you're talking of cultural expressions, Honorable Speaker, we are looking at music, we are looking at arts, we are looking at language, we are looking at many ways in which culture is expressed, even ways of dressing, even foods and all that, medicines and all that. Those are forms of expressions, and this can be expressed in books, it can be expressed in museums, it can be expressed in exhibitions, it can be expressed in very many ways, Honorable Speaker. So what Senator Kasanga is saying is a constitutional requirement, and we must seek to defend our Constitution, because we accepted the Constitution and everything there is in the Constitution. And even before I go on, I would like Senator Kasanga to scale this up so that it is enshrined in law, so that it becomes a bill of the land. And if it becomes a bill and is accepted to, even the propositions that she's bringing on board concerning county governments, promoting culture, these are things that will just be automatic, because then they'll be forced to follow the law, and if they follow the law, then we are going to preserve our cultural heritage for the purpose of the coming generations, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when we are talking of culture, culture is a unifying factor everywhere. You will find that when it comes to Somalis, they have their ways of dressing. They have their foods they love to eat. Probably even camel milk is preferred to even cow milk and all that. When you go to Luoland, they also have things they cherish. They also have their ways of doing things. When it comes to foods, they have food they cherish. They love to eat fish. When it comes to Luyas also, you'll find that there are things they cherish. They have their own food they cherish. They cherish chicken. They cherish mrenda, which is very medicinal. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to even foods, when it comes to dressing, these are things that are very important. In fact, there are some cultural foods that are being used right now. Sometimes they're even taken from here, then they're exported maybe to China and other places. They're refined and they're brought here and they become very expensive, Honorable Speaker. Just to give an example of there's a stick that is normally eaten in Western and other places called mgombero. Mgombero is a stimulant, and it's chilled most of the time, and it is cheap. It can easily be found in the forest. And this mgombero was eaten long time ago. I remember even when my grandfather, Ruben Haguri Isuri, was taking us, to visit the forest. We would pluck the mgombero and would chew. And it was very good that as children we really love to do that. So I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that even the foods that are used in, our traditional foods. I remember when we were sick, even when I was a young child then, sometimes you would have a headache, sometimes maybe malaria, but we never went to hospital. There's some, foods that we just took. There were barks of trees that I remember we used, like muarubaini to treat some ailments, and aloe vera was also used traditionally to treat some ailments, Honorable Speaker. But it's unfortunate the young generation that is coming up are not aware of this, are not aware that there's some foods that come out strongly that are medicinal, that can help them, and they are traditional. And you'll find most of the time when it comes to foods, the youngsters will go for pizza. The youngsters will go for, foods that they're actually eventually disease-causing, forgetting that we have our own traditional food that can really help. Honorable Speaker, we cannot blame the young generation, but we need to put in policies, Senator Kansanga proposes on the floor of this House, policies that will ensure that we are developing the traditional foods, we are developing the traditional music and all that, Honorable Speaker. Even when it came to music, Honorable Speaker, we had different kinds of music. When, someone gave birth, there were music to just celebrate the occasion of childbearing. Every stage in life had music to celebrate. When it came also to funerals, there were dirges that would really express how sorrowful people were. And even among the dirges, there were some dirges that, were quick ones and to enjoy that someone was getting to the other side, transiting to the other side of the world, Honorable Speaker. But it's unfortunate that the youngsters are not aware of this. And for the case of our future and ensuring that our culture goes on, we need to really look for ways of ensuring that we do not lose out on this rich culture that we have, Honorable Speaker. And even when it comes to Kiswahili, Honorable Speaker, Kiswahili is a lingua franca. And being a lingua franca, we need to cherish it as a language and ensure that we are actually passing it to the next generation. Because, Honorable Speaker, there are some children who cannot even be able to speak Kiswahili. There are some children who just go to high-end schools all through, so they find it difficult when they're fully grown. And they want to learn Kiswahili, because as a leader, Honorable Speaker, for example, you cannot be a leader without Kiswahili. You must know Kiswahili as a lingua franca. That will help you reach out to the people you are leading, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, we find that there's a lot of good heritage that we are losing away. I will also give another example of passage to another level of life where boys were now being circumcised and being initiated to go to the next level, Honorable Speaker. I remember also when I was growing up, it was a rich culture. Honorable Speaker, and everyone was looking forward to it. After some years, I think after every 2 years or 3 years, boys were being initiated, and it was something that was celebrated, and sometimes people would come from far and wide just to see how the young boys were, dancing with masks and all that. And I remember even when we were going to the Posho Mill, I remember it is like yesterday, Honorable Speaker, when I was a young girl, when you're going to the Posho Mill and you see the candidates, initiates coming towards you, you had to hide because they're not supposed to even see the face of a woman or even girls around when they're being initiated. They were really pepper hot. And if you met them, maybe they could even beat you up. So you are told in advance, just hide. If you're a woman, just hide. If you're a girl, just hide. That culture was rich. And then there was a day when they were allowing now everyone to see them. So you would see them maybe once a week. So that day you go, you see them, they dance, and it was very, very interesting. And they would wear masks such that they would see you through the mask, but you could not see them. So everyone was looking forward to a time when they would be initiated and then given back to the society as men. That was a very rich culture, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, we must ensure that county governments, and we must put county governments to task to ensure that they're developing our heritage. The national government normally sends money to county governments, and most of the time we pass monies to go to the county government. In the yearly development plan, county governments must ensure that they're allocating, resources to ensure that they're developing our heritage, to ensure that they're developing our culture in terms of even coming up with museums, Honorable Speaker. They can come up with museums, and if they create museums, they'll have also employed, people in the museum, because we'll have people who are taking others to the museums. We'll have also tutors who are even, teaching people about the African traditional heritage, what was there, Honorable Speaker. And this is it will be very rich for us as Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. It's unfortunate that even our children, you'll find that most children, especially those who are brought up in towns, they may not even know their vernacular language. It becomes very difficult. They get the language of the catchment area, and then when they are fully grown, it becomes a harrowing moment for them to learn on their own this language, Honorable Speaker. So there's need, Honorable Speaker, to ensure that we are not losing all of our culture, and even county executives can even plan, contest shows. Just a show in the county, every county having a show to celebrate our cultures, to celebrate ourselves, to celebrate, our leaders, Honorable Speaker. It is unfortunate that, this Senator Kasanga has proved, when she was doing her debate, that when the white man came, he said that in their books, Honorable Speaker, I'm a scholar and I'm also a student of history. It is unfortunate that in the history books you'll see the ones that are written by white men, they'll say that the first person to see Kilimanjaro was so and so. Yet Kilimanjaro was there, Honorable Speaker. Kilimanjaro did not come at a time of, the white man. But Honorable Speaker, they do not say that this is the first white man to name Kilimanjaro, because the locals were there, they had their own name for Kilimanjaro. But when the scholars who are biased, who are inclined to Europe, write their books, they would write and say they were the first one to see. When it comes to Lake Victoria, Honorable Speaker, you'll even find in books they are saying so and so was the first one to see Lake Victoria. And yet we have so many people, Africans, who are living there, who are fishing there, who are getting a source of income from there, Honorable Speaker. So I think, as the Constitution says very clearly, when it comes to our culture, it can be expressed in literature, it can be expressed in writing, it can be expressed in books, and even in libraries, so that even we glorify what is ours, Honorable Speaker. And not to say, Honorable Speaker, and even those Kenyan scholars who are listening to our proceedings should know that we're encouraging them as senators to ensure that they're coming up with writings that glorify our own, to ensure that they're coming up with writings that glorify our culture, Honorable Speaker. We cannot just sit and say that we do not have a culture. The culture comes from the West, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, culturally, you'll find that a long time we did not have children on the streets. in a situation where children's parents were dead, the community would embrace them. The community would take care of them. The community would ensure that they're feeding. The community will ensure that they're going to school and all that, Honorable Speaker. But at the moment, we have so many street children, Honorable Speaker. This is not one of our cultures, Honorable Speaker. And I want to give an example of Rebecca, wherever she is. Rebecca, whose mother, disappeared in the whirlwind. And they do not know their father, Honorable Speaker. You can imagine, Honorable Speaker, I want you to listen to this, that 3 children, their mother has gone mad, and they do not have a father. They do not have where they come from, Honorable Speaker, and they're just left on their own, Honorable Speaker. Traditionally, this would never happen. They would traditionally take care of these children and ensure they make a living, and they would become part of the family. Honorable Speaker, I remember I was given that burden of Rebecca, and I decided they'll be my children. I'll have another family there so that I can embrace them. I can take care of them, Honorable Speaker, as a mother, because I have the cultural values in me, Honorable Speaker. And I would not want to abdicate the cultural responsibility, Honorable Speaker. The communal responsibility we all have as Africans, Honorable Speaker. So I want to say, Honorable Speaker, even the media should always be glorifying the foods we eat, the songs we believe in, and everything about our culture, Honorable Speaker. That is how we are going to sustain our culture, Honorable Speaker. We have a ministry that deals with culture, but Honorable Speaker, they need to interrogate whether this ministry is really alive in ensuring that we are encouraging development of our culture. We are also grooming our children, Honorable Speaker. They can have competition so that those who excel in culture, in cultural activities, can be awarded, Honorable Speaker. Even counties that do well in cultural development, they can also be awarded, and they can be given recognition, Honorable Speaker. Even presidential, recognition, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to music, we have very, very strong artists who are not even embracing, the local artists. They can do very well in singing Kibukusu, Kikuyu, Maragoli, and all other African languages, Honorable Speaker. We need to ensure that these artists are brought on board. We are encouraging them, we are supporting them so that they can grow our culture, Honorable Speaker. And even Article 11 says clearly, Honorable Speaker, there is need for royalty. There's need for compensation for using other people's culture. But in the media, you'll find that people's culture are used, no compensation. Local artists who are very strong, they are very creative, they are used, no compensation, Honorable Speaker. We need to look for mechanisms of compensating and encouraging culture so that it propagates, Honorable Speaker. I beg to second this statement, Honorable Speaker, and I calling upon my fellow senators to do the same, and so that this motion goes to the relevant office for execution, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
I now propose the question, which is that whereas Kenya is a multi-ethnic and a multiracial country with rich and diverse cultural resources such as traditional medicine and foods, arts, craft, music, dances, dress, among others, aware that the Constitution in its preamble acknowledges the cultural diversity of Kenya people who are determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation, whilst Article 11 of the Kenyan Constitution recognizes culture as the foundation of the nation. Noting that while the Department of Culture under the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage has been playing some of the key roles in promotion of cultural integration, formulation of policies and standards that will guide the development of culture, little information has been available to the Kenyan public. Acknowledging that culture performs a significant role in the life of child, the culture background in which a child is brought up affects the totality of his role or her life's activities. Concerned that our children are losing their sense of identity due to negative influence, due to inadequate cultural identity characterized by globalization, which has led to catastrophic consequences to the next generation, as experienced in our country, where a majority of young people are showing symptoms of feeling suicidal, anxious, feeling of hopelessness, anger, violence, feeling isolated, and paranoia. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage to A. Formulate cultural development policies and initiatives to inculcate stronger community values, safeguard Kenya's heritage, recognize local heroes, and promote socio-cultural opportunities in the counties, and B. Formulate strategies to create an enabling environment for protection and promotion of diversity of cultural expression in all counties. Senator Mwaura.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mwaura, I want you to start by reading your statement.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Energy on the circumstances surrounding the death of Mr. Felix Odhiambo, a resident of Githurai Estate, who died from electrocution. In the statement, the committee should, 1, appraise the Senate on the circumstances that led to the death of Mr. Felix Odhiambo, a resident of Githurai Estate, from electrocution and provide an update on the investigations into the death. Should spell out measures that have been put in place to ensure the contractor who undertook the works on this particular line is held accountable for the death of the family of Mr. Otieno compensated. 3, state targeted interventions to regulate wiring practitioners in the industry, noting the rising number of quacks practicing in various many settlements like Githurai and other places. And number 4, finally, state measures, if any, to mitigate the rising cases of electrocution in the country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mwaura. Senator Sakaja. You had said you wanted, you had requested when...
Yes, I want to speak. I mean, we're on this bill. I'd like to speak to it. But also, Speaker, I can't ignore what Senator Mwaura has asked for. This man, Felix Odhiambo, was electrocuted in Mwihoko. You know, we share Githurai. Githurai 44 is in my county. 45 is in Ruiru, in Kiambu County. But this gentleman, his death was very curious because he is known within Mwihoko to be, you know, he does a lot of this electrical work. But on this date, of course, when you go up the pole, they switch off the power. But when he went up, it was switched off. Then while he was up, it was switched back on while he was up there. And when he, of course, fell with a thud, the authorities and the Kenyan Power people fled the scene with their vehicles. So it's very curious. And I think serious questions need to be asked. Of course, on top of that, we have a lot of these deaths and fires in my informal settlements in Nairobi. Because we have refused, and I've really been pushing for the last few years, for social connections of power in our slum areas. Mr. Speaker, you can't expect somebody in Mathare to be paying the same tariff as somebody, or the difference is very small with somebody in Karen or somebody, you know, just next to them in Muthaiga. Mr. Speaker, there's a way we can do social connections. We've seen social connections policy of electricity and water being implemented. These people are willing to pay, but it must be affordable, because either way they are paying somehow. So these illegal connections, but the reason why there's always fire in Huruma is the reason partly of some of the fires in Gikomba, and it's the reason why in many of our slums, you know, there are a lot of unnecessary deaths. Because today, and I think as a fourth generation right, electricity is one of the new rights that people should have. And even soon, access to internet is going to be, when you're talking about an urban area. So I want to thank Senator Mwaura for that statement, and I hope that the committee that it's been, you know, given to can act on it. The family of Felix, he's left a young wife and children. May they, you know, may they get justice. There's nothing that can be done that will bring back his life, but let them feel a sense of justice, and that it is not a practice that can be condoned going forward. Let things be done professionally. But again, I still appeal to Kenya Power. I went to them in 2017. I went again in 2018. Of course, there had been a lot of changes in the leadership. I just told them, look, can we just reconfigure, reimagine how we want to have these power connections in many of our informal settlements. They're afraid because they know if their car is in. I remember there's a former MP who said, wake a tire when you see them. And he said, no, he meant put the tire for the vehicle to go. But these people in Nairobi, in my informal settlements, are human beings. And you can talk to them. We can understand each other. They understand the danger. There are a lot of naked lines in many of these informal settlements. Just move around, go to Mukuru, go to Kibera, go to Madare, go to, Kosovo, all these places. Those people deserve dignity, and they deserve to be connected. So I thank Senator Mora for that. Mr. Speaker, I have seen this bill. If you allow me now to move to Senator Kasanga's motion, on fast tracking. Let me look at it in the order paper. The motion on fast tracking cultural developments in counties.
And Senator Sakaja,
yes.
When Senator Sylvia Kasanga was speaking, I could see you nodding when she was schooling you on the naming of many places.
Yes, I was very interested in that. I didn't know Kilimanjaro meant a hill that's difficult to climb in Kikamba. I knew about Chief Kivoi and him showing the missionaries the snow-capped mountain and said Kenya. I thought Kenya meant Kirinyaga, but because this area we call it Kirinyaga, but she has a different version. It's what they call a peacock, an ostrich with the snow, the white on the head. All of that, there are many examples of how things, are named. Mr. Speaker, my ancestry come from a place called Ikolomani, part of my ancestry. And Ikolomani, my grandfather would tell me, was just gold mine, said in a Luya accent. Say gold mine, which is Ikolomani, because there's gold, and there used to be gold there. The other side of my ancestry is from a place called Olgorian, where the original Sakajas come from, in Kilgoris, the Maasai. And Olgorian again is land of gold. So there's a lot of gold in my blood. And all this, translation of words, the great corner, the Goreti corner, the carrier corps, in Karioko, even what Ngara means, is part of the history of our country. And many of the places that we now fondly refer to, but many people don't know the origin, and the entomology of, how things have been named. I think there's a need to preserve that. And there's a need to encourage our young people to understand, our children to understand. Things have moved so fast. Every morning I drop my kids to school. And when I drop them, I normally wonder, because I use this museum here, which, the road goes up on Thika Road. I'm going towards Thika Road. But when you go up Museum Hill, right, there's a spot where we pass, right? At that spot, my mom had a kiosk when I was a kid. Right at that spot. These kids can never understand that there was no road like that before, because it just used to be a hill, and right outside the museum we had a kiosk there, and then it goes down in the roundabout, and my nursery school, which I went to, was there. So I explained to them, do you know, when I used to leave this nursery school, I'd come up and get a boiled egg at the kiosk, which was mom's here. You can't fathom, because they don't know Nairobi without that. Now with the expressway, they will never understand that this didn't exist. If you look at Thika Road, how it is today, and Langata Road, can you try and remember how Thika Road used to be? So development obscures memories of what we used to have. And which is why I remember during the last time we were commemorating the death of the founding father, Mzee Kenyatta, I told President Uhuru Kenyatta that, there are many people who didn't see Kenyatta, including myself. But today I'm a leader. There are many people who are not alive when Jomo Kenyatta was around. This mausoleum must be turned into a presidential museum, or expanded into a presidential museum, where young people can come and see this was our history. Just because you remember it, there's a generation that doesn't remember. And I'm glad with what the president has been able to do with Uhuru Gardens, that there shall be a museum where we can go through and see what our culture was, our journey. And it's very poetic that it's at the place where our first flag was flown as a Union Jack was brought down. We must remember it. And so I am grateful to understand it. You know, there's a lot of beautiful things from our different communities. I love traveling, and sometimes I go towards Isiolo, where Senator Dulo knows I have relatives there as well who vote for her all the time. And I get the stories from the north, what used to happen. My elder sister is called Njeri, and she's married to a guy called Galgalo, Malicha. Galgalo tells me the stories of Marsabit coming down to Isiolo, and how they initially, you know, felt part of a different place, the stories of the people who are there, and we don't get these things. There is no way you create cohesion in this country without culture. Our constitution talks about the beauty of our diversity, but how do we express it? We've lacked a way to bring out the beauty of our diversity, and so because we've not focused on what a Kenyan identity is, we have tribalism where people now go to their localized cultural identity as a protection. And so we build fences, not bridges. What we've been doing is building fences and not bridges between communities. When you do that, then you don't have cultural identity in the positive manner. I remember President Moi saying that these vernacular stations are going to lead Kenya down the road the wrong way. People thought he's saying the wrong thing. But if you look at the post-election violence in 2007, it was really fueled a lot by the way we've used our cultural identity. It is like fire. Fire can be used to cook, to warm, to create, you know, to be used in industries, to build things. But fire can also be used to destroy and to burn. How we use our culture is extremely important in building bridges for us to know each other. And Mr. Speaker, I'm very fortunate that I'm speaking as Senator of Nairobi, because I intend and I hope that Nairobi being the capital of this country, Nairobi being a place where we all call home, Mr. Speaker, Nairobi is a place where I have voters and residents from all the communities of this country, 43 communities, plus the international community. Now, if you want to talk about fast-tracking cultural developments in counties, ask yourself, how do you do that in a cosmopolitan and international global capital like Nairobi? And Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of ideas of how we can do it, because once we do it right here, Mr. Speaker, it will lead to a stronger, cohesive country, and city of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, I hope and I pray, because you know I intend to vie for the seat of governor of Nairobi, that God willing, inshallah, if I become governor of Nairobi, we will have an annual Nairobi Arts and Cultural Festival that is going to be a global event. Mr. Speaker, at this festival, thank you very much, Senator Musuruve. Thank you very, you know, I think there was a poll that came out today that was positive. But at this, in this festival, Mr. Speaker, it's very important, because for you to deal with a city, you must first start with the software of the city before the hardware. The reason why you have people flocking to New York is because they've dealt with the software. I love New York. They call it the Big Apple. The reason why people go to California is because, you know, in LA, there's a vibe that you've created around it, that this is the place of film, this is a place of art, this is a place where you, I mean, if it's San Francisco, it is known for, if you have an idea and you come to San Francisco, the Silicon Valley, you'll get funders, etc. What are we saying is the vibe of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker? We must be able to define it, that Nairobi one is a land of opportunities and possibilities for every African, the capital of Africa. And Mr. Speaker, once we've stated that, and it will sound haughty, it will sound very ambitious, but I will say, look, Nairobi is going to be the capital of Africa, the land of possibilities, beyond just the green city under the sun. And then we now sell the culture of this city. You know, that I love Nairobi, I am Nairobi. You first give people the ownership. Now the culture is this. Culture is not just static. Culture actually is very dynamic. It is always dynamic. It is always in process. It is always in flux. It is always acting on human society while also being a product of that human society. There are people who come to Nairobi, and I remember when there was a ban, you remember there was this ban on Matatu graffiti. I went to see my friend in Isili, Section 3. His name is Moha. He does what you call Moha graphics. And he's a guy I've known since I was a young person, when I'd walk across from Gara to Karioko and to Isili. And there was a group from South Africa, on that same day that it was banned, a group came from South Africa just to see how this matatu culture is done, how they do the graffiti, how they put the music, and how it is creating employment. That is part of urban culture, Mr. Speaker. Culture is not something stuck at a certain historical point that now will let us all now wear traditional clothes and remember that culture. The elements of the dynamic nature of culture and the traditional culture. So let us not confuse culture with traditions. Traditions are very important. And in this annual Nairobi Cultural and Arts Festival, we'll be asking the Kambas to bring the Mudokoi to town. We'll be asking the Kikuyus to bring their Irio and their Ndumas and Ngwashes. The Luyas to bring their Ingoho. The Luos to bring their fish. And we will experience the food from across the country and international. We will go and lock up the city for 3 days. There's going to be food. There's going to be music from across the country. Yeah? The jazz, that is urban culture, with the Ohangla, Mr. Speaker. The Isukuti with the hip hop, Mr. Speaker. Because Nairobi is a melting point of all these cultures that we have. Yeah? Bring them together and have that music festival in Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, that is culture. That we're going to have art. We have beautiful art. Mr. Speaker, the people who come from across the world to look at our art, yet here we're buying fake art. We're not appreciating our artists. To come and see what is this art that, the Maasai used to do. Mr. Speaker, do you know even within the tombs of the pharaohs, we have found as part of the hieroglyphics, the Maasai warriors have been captured there. We don't have it here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was in London Museum last week, the British Museum. And in the British Museum, Mr. Speaker, you find a lot of curated art from Africa, including from Kenya. How comes we don't have it here? In fact, the first thing the British need to do is to first repatriate, to bring back people's... there was all this art from Egypt, from West Africa, the bronze of Benin, the Kingdom of Benin. I'm glad I was able to once meet the Esama of Benin, who gave me some bronze sculptures from there. But those things belong to us, so that we can come experience each other's art. And the more we know each other, because tribalism is a direct result of ignorance, Mr. Speaker. The people are told, this community, they eat people. Others are told, this community are thieves. This community, they are dirty, etc. I see my time is running out. I have so much to say. So there's going to be our art. There's going to be our photography that is on display every year. Mr. Speaker, in 5 years, we're going to make the Nairobi Festival a global event that is enhancing culture. So this motion, Mr. Speaker, on top of just talking about what Senator Kasanga wants, I want to say practically what we can be able to do. And as we do that, Mr. Speaker, the arts are an economic frontier. Look at a lot of these roads being done and the bridges. Do you know we can get a lot of proper artwork on there? Not this funny graffiti that might be, disastrous, but proper art that shows who we are as Nairobians, who we are as a city. Mr. Speaker, unless you do the software and the heart and the soul, what is the vibe of this place? The hardware, you can do roads, you'll do trains, you'll do hospitals, but there's no soul. And that's why when you ask people, where are you from? They say, I am from Isiolo, but I live in Nairobi. I am from Nyandaro, but I live in Nairobi. Some of us don't know. We say we are from here, and we must make sure that that culture comes out. So culture is not static. Culture is dynamic. Let us appreciate what has been there before, but let us also bring out who we have become, a product of the music, a product of different communities. Mr. Speaker, I remember even at my wedding, I don't think there was anyone from my community on my lineup, because I've not grown up with them, Mr. Speaker. My best friends are from all communities. I have a friend who we grew up with called Mutai. It is 2-3 years ago that I knew his tribe, because it has never mattered to me. And that is the urban aspect. I know people have different experience from the rural side, but that is what Nairobi is. That for us, it doesn't matter your second name, it doesn't matter where you're from. What matters is the content of your character and the person you are. Let us make Nairobi then the place of opportunities by enhancing this culture and that vibe. And finally, part of our culture as Nairobi, what we're known for. I gave a speech one day in 2015. I was in a place called the Institute of the Future in San Francisco, what we call the Silicon Valley. And these people asked me, how is it that we're seeing a lot of innovation coming from Kenya and from Nairobi? And I told them, listen, 2 reasons. One, we are the Silicon Savannah. But I told them the world has moved. It's now a global village, driven by information, powered by knowledge, such that the same tools a young person in San Francisco has for coding or developing software, is the same exact tools that a young person in Nairobi has, but the needs are different. While you guys are coding and creating apps for luxury shopping, for entertainment, as we are connecting people to water, we are doing education apps, because necessity is a mother of invention. Nairobi is now being seen as the next frontier for innovation, and that's why we sponsored the startup bill, which has gone to the National Assembly. That is going to be part of that Nairobi Festival. That anybody from Africa who says, I have an idea, I have a form of expression, I'm looking for an opportunity, will know to come to the city of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion by Senator and Senator Kasanga. You've brought amazing motions, and you're also a Nairobian. I know you like going to Machakos and whatnot, but you're a Nairobian because you espouse the culture, and you actually have left a mark and a symbol through our architecture that will forever be in the skylines of this city because of what she has been able to do as an architect and also as a fighter for issues of mental health. So thank you. That is part of who we are as Nairobi. So when I say I am Nairobi, you also can say I am Nairobi, because that's who we are. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Sakaja. Senator Abshir Harake.
Can I have them? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support Senator Kasanga on her motion on fast-tracking cultural developments in counties. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate her because Senator Kasanga has always come up with very useful pieces of legislation that will definitely put her on the map of this tough parliament as having really brought about great change to our country in her tenure. Mr. Speaker, I think the issues of culture cannot be gainsaid, given that culture gives us our identity, it gives us our language, it gives us future opportunities as well, because as Senator Sakaja has said, culture is not static, it's growing, it's unfolding right before our eyes. But again, we must make sure we look back to look forward. How do we look back to look forward? By ensuring that we preserve where we came from, so then it's clear for us where we are going with our culture, and that we are sort of anchored in our identity, in our language, and in ourselves as people, because that's where our pride comes from, having an identity and having a history of which we are proud. Now, how can we be proud of a history that doesn't exist, hasn't been preserved, especially for our children? How do we then have, while we're not saying that government should be teaching our children language, while we're not saying government should take the whole responsibility, because we as parents, we as Kenyans must also take our rightful role in ensuring that our culture is preserved. We cannot put everything on government, and this is, I think, where we must then. And this is why I like what the prayer for this motion is. It's just giving the government to do what it's supposed to do. The rest we will do as parents and as mothers and as fathers, to formulate cultural development policies and initiatives to inculcate stronger community values, safeguard Kenya's heritage, recognize local heroes, promote socio-cultural opportunities in the counties, and formulate strategies to create an enabling environment for protection and promotion of diversity of cultural expressions in our counties. That is not too much to ask. It's exactly and precisely what governments should do. Lay the right frameworks within which we as Kenyans can then exercise our culture and preserve it for ourselves, or use it as a point of reference, or use it as a point of teaching our kids, and also use it as perhaps even in our education systems. Mr. Speaker, the community I come from is very rich in culture. The Borana community of northern Kenya, all the way to southern Ethiopia, practiced what they called a Gada system, which is basically a system of governance, a very, very democratic system of governance that actually studied the world over, where every 8 years, 9 individuals are are elected to look after the political, social, economic, and cultural aspects of the community in the Gada system every 8 years, then it's a very democratic system upon which, in fact, our democracy could actually be based, because a democracy that is embedded in our culture, a democracy that knows where we came from, a democracy that we can relate to, perhaps might serve us better than perhaps imported versions of the democratic values that we perhaps attempt to follow at the moment. So in terms of even the politics of the day, not just the cultural aspects, we have very rich cultures, especially where I come from. The Borona community has a very, very rich culture where by consensus, every 5 years, they would choose 9 elders. So I'm just seeing the opportunities if this motion is passed. And what I like about this is that this motion actualizes and implements articles of our Constitution as Article 11 to ensure that we just don't have laws that are beautiful on paper. These kinds of motions is what breaks down our laws, our Constitution, into what we do on a daily basis to actualize the dreams that our Constitution contains. So I congratulate Senator. And also, while looking at this, there are certain harmful cultural conditioning that we must guard against as well. So I'm hoping that as the ministry formulates these cultural development policies, they look at what is good and encourage that, but also while minimizing the other harmful cultural conditioning that exists. For instance, female genital mutilation, for instance, early marriages, for instance, such things as wife beating as a form of love for women. These kinds of cultural conditioning is what we need to yes, I said female genital mutilation and violence against women. So again, this gives us an opportunity to actually to pick what's good in our culture and to ensure that certain cultural conditioning that's harmful to the less vulnerable and harmful to our children and to our women and to our people with disabilities and even to our men in certain cases are minimized or are eliminated while we look at this. So again, I do not wish to take too much time. I know there's quite a number of issues on the order paper, but I'd like to say that again, culture is of course dynamic. Culture is of course growing and unfolding, but we must first of all ensure we preserve what we have, we understand what we have, we highlight what we have, we celebrate what we have, so then we can go forward with what then would become or what then would start to manifest and what then would start to develop as we go along. We have, spoken word, we have in artists. In fact, I'm just from the People's Dialogue Festival at the museum, which is run by my organization, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, and all the different political parties were there. In this, we had culinary corner where people were cooking traditional foods all the way from Denmark to Moyale, all the way from, and this is part of culture because the food we eat is informed by our cultural heritage. What is food for one person is poison for another. But then through this cultural understanding, even peace can be achieved, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so there's a lot to be said for culture. There's a lot to be learned from it, but also as this House and as leaders, we then definitely have to look at what cultural values are going to be useful to us because we're not a stagnant society, and what cultural conditioning that is not harmful, that's not good for us, we can minimize. And this is where the government comes in. But we as Kenyans, we as parents, we as the women, we as maybe even the youth of this country perhaps would be taking responsibility. I'm a bit concerned that sometimes where we're going, we've become a society that looks at the next person to sort our problems out. We've become the society that decides everything must be sorted out by the politician or by the government. I think this is a notion and a narrative we need to make sure we discourage, because our culture or our problems are first and foremost our responsibilities, after which then we can go to government for the frameworks that Senator Kasanga has asked for in this motion. And as I said, I like that we're not putting every responsibility on government. We're just asking for the right framework within which we can practice our culture without discrimination, without any other form of barriers to our cultural diversity in this country. So I think with those few remarks, I would support this and hope that we see this being implemented even before we go on recess, because some of these things are very easily done because the culture exists, the people exist, everything is there. It's just a matter of pulling together these things and making sure that we have a system or an environment within which then our culture can thrive. Madam Speaker, today, Mr. Speaker, sorry. Today, as I was listening to the young people at the Center for Multiparty at the museum, one lady said she would never vote because she doesn't think she'll be alive by the time of voting. I was very shocked and very disturbed. Such is where the desperation and lack of our youth are giving up. When I was talking about let's not be bystanders, let's do something with our vote, let's vote for the right people, she said, I don't think I'll be there. How desperate has our country become? What are we going to do about that? That's the mental health that Senator Kasanga is talking about in this motion, where our children, our young are becoming anxious, they're becoming hopeless, they're becoming suicidal. And that is creating an apathy of an unimaginable scale. And so if culture can help, and I know it can, let's do everything we can do at our disposal, including making sure that our cultural upbringing, where the child is the responsibility of the village, of everybody. If you're seen doing something wrong in the villages in the past, somebody else disciplined you. If somebody saw you being beaten by somebody unfairly, somebody else defended you. Now you'll find somebody being beaten, a woman's handbag being snatched, a woman being harassed, as we saw. Nobody's coming to help anybody. That is a breakdown. And so I support and I congratulate Senator Kasanga and look forward to this being actualized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Halake. Senator Agnes Kavindo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to join my fellow senators in congratulating Senator Kasanga for this very important motion of cultural development in counties. Mr. Speaker, even in BBI, when we were writing the report, we had suggested that we have cultural centers in every county, and also have exchange programs. And I thank Senator Kasanga for bringing this up because the BBI didn't go through. So I think through this motion of Senator Kasanga, this can be accomplished. Mr. Speaker, when people had their own cultures and they ate their own cultural foods, there were not as many sicknesses as we have today. So I think and I believe if we go back to our cultures, we will have health living, and many people will come out of health problems that they have, because indigenous foods are very important for us to eat. We've gone, for these foods, other foods, which are very harmful to our bodies, especially foods that are planted with fertilizers. And we're always talking of fertilizers. We've forgotten our natural manure from the cows, the manures that our great parents used to make, naturally. And that was the best for farming. Mr. Speaker, I also would say that before this civilization, there was not a lot of wickedness in our countries or in our counties, because if it is men, young men, old men used to sit with them outside and advise them on how to live and what to do and what not to do. The women used to sit with women, ladies, the girls, and advise them. And there was not a lot of wickedness that, like we saw just the other day, that lady driving, and I had just an accident. It's no more to have an accident, and these young men just went for her and did all manner of things which we condemn powerfully, because we don't want to see this brutality towards women. That's a young girl. I don't want to think of the trauma that she's going through right now, and I don't know how long that trauma will live with her until maybe she gets medical attention and she's able to come out of it. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that it is very important to have these culturals and this culture, the culture, except that which will interfere with Christianity. Because also Christianity is very important. We have good morals in Christianity, so that which will differ with Muslim culture, Christianity culture, that should be left out, because then it will not be good for any of our religions. Mr. Speaker, I want also to commend that the female FGM should not be entertained, because it is not good for our girls. It's part of the culture. I know there are people who really go for it, but it is not good for them. And also early marriage. Many of the cultures used to give out their daughters as early as even the age of 9 years, 10 years, and this is not a culture that we should entertain. But the good culture, Mr. Speaker, I say we should have it. Also medical, traditional medicine. We used to have traditional medicines which could heal many of the sicknesses. Today we have to go for these medicines from the chemistry and from the doctors, and many of them treat this and cause this other effect in the body. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion, and I pray that it shall see the light of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Agnes Kavindu. There being no any other request, I call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply and start by thanking Senator Dr. Musuruve for seconding the motion and adding color to it and telling us a little bit about her own cultural background. Thank you very much. I also want to thank Senator Sakaja for reminding us that there's actually an urban culture. There's an urban culture that should be celebrated, and that it should be seen differently from the traditional culture that we speak of in the motion. And I liked that he has said when he becomes governor, inshallah, and we wish well for him, that he will bring the celebration of the urban culture here in Nairobi and make it a global event. I actually look forward to that, because we've seen other modern cities and how they celebrate their urban cultures, and it's usually a wonderful thing. But if he was here, I just also would have liked to remind him not to forget that the traditional culture must also feature within the urban culture. And we've traveled in many cities, and you've seen how even the greatest cities, when you go to Washington, D.C. and any other, you will always find a history museum that traces the history of a people wherever they are. And I think that is very critical, and that is what we are talking about. Places where, of course, the government now with the president, what he has done at Uhuru Gardens, we are going to see a celebration of, our heroes, and that is really critical. Our children must know where they have come from. Like what Senator Halake has said, and I really thank her, we must look back to look forward. We have to know, we have to be grounded. You saw Senator Obama, the former President Obama, when he was a senator and he had to retrace his roots because he felt the need, when you read his book, he felt the need to understand, where do I come from? Who am I? And he traced his roots back at home. And, that is the sense of grounding that every human being wishes for. And if you have the opportunity to do it, you want to do it. So for us as leaders in our nation, we can help our children by giving them that, that history, so that they know who they are and where they come from as they plan to move forward. And I want to thank Senator Halake for giving us a little insight on her community, the Borana people. And I say this is the beauty of celebrating each other's diversity. You said some things I didn't know. I didn't even know how wide your community is spread, geographically. And that is beautiful. And I completely agree with Senator Halake when she says that, whatever the government is doing, they should continue making sure harmful cultural practices are absolutely discouraged and fought and done away with, as we continue to welcome the new generation into maturity and to leadership. We have to support ending of any harmful cultural practices, just as what also Senator Kavindu has said. And then food. In fact, Senator Halake introduced the issue of cultural food, and Senator Kavindu has also said it. And our very own Senator Beth Mugo is on record here talking about healthy eating and going back to the basics. When, she's a cancer survivor, and she speaks to it, and she says the medicine for cancer is to eat right. He says, go back to the basics. Let us stop eating processed foods. I know when we say that, of course, you're attacking potential, economic builders. But the fact remains that our food is affecting us. Food and mental health go together. This is something that I spoke about today at the CMD. And we said food and mental health absolutely go together. And some of the outreach programs you would expect now from our CECs of agriculture in the counties, we would expect now, outreach programs of telling people which are the foods that are supposed to be eaten on a daily basis. Somehow, traditionally, I remember the foods our grandmother used to serve us when we go and visit her. The millets and the sorghums and the everything. And they've gone away. Now you go and just find maize. Maize is not the healthiest thing to eat, But somehow, it has become like that is the staple food. But we've done away with other things that, our grandmothers used to eat that were extremely healthy for us and for our mental wellness. And that is something we must come back to as we celebrate, our cultures and everything else. Senator Kavindu brought up the issue of religion. And of course, religion plays a critical part. And it has its place. Once we were colonized, now we were introduced to religion. And now religion is shaping us as a people. And it has its place in our society. And of course, that has to be celebrated alongside with the culture. We are now not saying let us go back, as much as we're talking about let us celebrate things like traditional medicine. Now, we are not saying that we should go back to witchcraft and, all other dark vices. Again, those are the negative cultural practices we should not be looking to. But we can celebrate traditional medicine. Herbal medicine is in fact, COVID has been fought by herbal medicine. I mean, how many of us, we've been drinking dawa like no one's business? And back at home, I think it is moharubaine they take, isn't it? They take moharubaine. And these are things that were used in those, by our grandmothers and many others. In fact, every time I go down to Makueni, there's a gentleman who makes us this herbal concoction that just calms you down and you sleep very well. You wake up without any stresses. So we have to celebrate these cultural things and allow the space for religion where it rightfully is placed for. So I want to thank the senators so much for all their contributions, and to just say that I hope that this motion will see the light of day, and that as Kenyans and as we go to a political season, our cultures and our different backgrounds should not be used to divide us by our leaders, by ourselves. We should not use our own cultures to divide ourselves. If anything, we must continue to celebrate our cultures and know that we are one people in as much as we have our different backgrounds and our different tribes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to reply.
Thank you. I have determined that this matter does not concern county. I now put the question, which is that whilst Kenya is a multi-ethnic and multiracial country with rich and diverse cultural resources such as traditional medicine and foods, arts, craft, music, dances, dress, among others. Aware that the Constitution in its preamble acknowledges the cultural diversity of Kenyan people who are determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation, whereas Article 11 of the Kenyan Constitution recognizes culture as the foundation of the nation. Noting that while the Department of Culture and the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage has been playing some of the key roles in promotion of cultural integration, formulation of policies and standards that will guide the development of culture, literature information has been available to the Kenyan public, acknowledging that culture performs a significant role in the life of a child. The culture background in which a child is brought up affects the totality of his or her life's activity. Concern that our children are losing their sense of identity due to negative influence due to inadequate culture identity characterized by globalization, which has led to catastrophic consequences to the next generation, as experienced in our country, where a majority of young people are showing symptoms of feeling suicidal, anxious, feeling of hopelessness, anger, violence, feeling isolated, and paranoia. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage to A, formulate cultural development policies and initiative to inculcate stronger community values, safeguard Kenya's heritage, recognize local heroes, and promote social cultural opportunities in the counties. And B, formulate strategies to create an enabling environment for protection and promotion of diversity of cultural expression in all counties. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of contrary opinions say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 28.
Next order.
Order number 28, motion integrating climate education into school curriculum at all levels.
Senator Abshiru Haraka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the motion to integrate climate education into school curriculum at all levels, aware that it is important that both the current and future generations are equipped to address the problems of climate change, and this can be accomplished by using appropriate instructional strategies such as integrating climate education into the syllabus to assist students in improving their understanding of climate change and acquiring the essential skills to reduce its effects, acknowledging that education is crucial to promote climate action as it helps individuals understand and address the impact of the climate crisis, empowering them with knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes needed to act as agents of change, hence protect the environment and take action by crafting community and higher level solutions. Cognizant of the fact that the Constitution of Kenya, Article 42, provides for the right to a clean and healthy environment for every Kenyan, which includes the right to have the environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations, and further noting that climate change is a global nightmare or global crisis with consequences that are already quite visible and should be a priority for our education curriculum in accordance to Article 12 of the Paris Agreement, which espouses the enhancement of climate change education, training, public awareness, public participation, and public access to information. And noting the urgent need and great opportunity that exists, Mr. Speaker, right now as we transition to the CBC curriculum, basically the competency-based curriculum, and noting that competency in climate change would give us the competency in climate action, and therefore a very big opportunity exists for us in this country to integrate climate education at this time of transition, where we are looking at the competency-based curriculum at all levels, and where we are making sure that the climate change must then become an integral part of our education system, so that then we mainstream climate action through climate education. And therefore the Senate calls upon the Council of Governors, whose responsibility early childhood education and basic education is, as well as the Ministry of Education and Science and Technology, all the way to higher learning, to integrate climate education in the school curriculum in all counties and equip school-going children and equip teachers and administrators with the necessary information, training, skills to teach climate education in schools, and ensure that climate is streamlined into our competency-based curriculum for a competent nation that can take climate action. I thank you, and I would request Senator Musuruve to kindly second this for me.
Senator Dr. Gertrude Musuruve.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance to second this motion. And Honorable Speaker, I must start by thanking Senator Halake for coming up with this motion that actually needs to be self-executing, Honorable Speaker. And what Senator Halake is seeking is to ensure that when it comes to issues of climate change, it is integrated in the school curriculum. So I want to say, Honorable Speaker, this is a very valid motion and concern that is truly seeking to ensure that we have food security in this country, that when it comes to our farmers also, they're enlightened on issues of climate change, Honorable Speaker, because when we are talking about climate change, sometimes climate change comes naturally, you see, according to the various cycles, but sometimes it is man-made. So there's need to integrate climate change in education system, Honorable Speaker. And as a scholar and as I stand here, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that when it comes to integrating climate change in a school curriculum, it must start all the way from universities, colleges, and then it cascades to primary schools, and so that it can be really effectively executed, Honorable Speaker. And I'm saying this because I know, as a scholar, that when something education starts from the top, that training is important, because when students go to colleges and universities, they actually surrender to those institutions so that they can get the values, and at the end or completion of their courses, they're given back to the society. The students are given back to the society. So by the time the students are given back to the society, they should be well nurtured with information that they're going to actually give to the society, because when it comes to education, it's supposed to be impactful, and it's supposed to bring and raise a whole rounded person, Honorable Speaker. So among the stakeholders that are very key in this motion, Honorable Speaker, and I also want to say, when Senator is here, Senator Halake, I think it is very important to bring in KICD as curriculum developers, because they will evaluate, they'll do evaluation of the materials that go to the ground, and there's need also to bring in issues of colleges and universities, so that even among the course descriptions or the course units that are offered, then they can purposely or deliberately have a unit or two on climate change and have it as a prerequisite, just like communication skills is a prerequisite in most colleges, Honorable Speaker, because if it's a prerequisite unit, it means that everyone getting out of colleges and universities goes back to the society with that knowledge, so that the graduates are able to impact to learners when they go back. So, Honorable Speaker, I think that is something that needs to really come out clearly, Hon Alake, because yes, it is good to bring in the COG, but the COG constitutionally they are mandated with ensuring ECD functions. So that is their function, to manage COGs. But when it comes to primary schools, secondary schools, and colleges, then the Ministry of Education comes in, Honorable Speaker, because when it comes to implementing, then at primary level, at college level, at primary level, at high school level, the learners will be strong enough, and they will know the need to conserve our environment, and they'll pass it on. They will not be involved in cases like felling trees. They will not be involved in cases that cause soil erosion, and they'll also know that there are measures that can be put in place to ensure that climate change does not adversely affect the society. Honorable Speaker, having said that, I have to say, Honorable Speaker, that when it comes to climate change, it poses a lot of difficulties, even to the farmers. Because we find, Honorable Speaker, when farmers are not aware of the climate change, sometimes it just happens, abruptly, where farmers were waiting for a rainy season in order to plant, but they realize that the rain is not forthcoming. So when it's not forthcoming, then they delay also in doing the planting and in the harvesting, Honorable Speaker, and that affects food security, Honorable Speaker. And as a nation, we're talking about food security, Honorable Speaker, and that is why this information needs to be inculcated to learners, to children, to everyone, to farmers in good time, so that they can know how to really arrest food insecurity. Because, Honorable Speaker, when it comes to food, and the research has been done that really attests to the fact that when it comes to food, you'll find that family farms are really handy when it comes to planting like maize, beans, and other foods. So if family farmers are not aware of these measures that need to be taken in place in order to cushion themselves against climate change, then it means that food security will be, compromised. And Honorable Speaker, when it comes to family food, most families will plant food, and this food will be used the whole year until the next harvest season, Honorable Speaker. And some families also use this food to, serve the food, to maintain themselves, to take their children to school, to ensure that they are also helping themselves with hospital, basic needs maintenance. Like, for example, if a family, plants maize, and the maize is doing well, this family has maize, but does not have sugar, does not have cooking fat, so the proceeds they get from selling the maize will help them get the other foods, Honorable Speaker. So I have to say, Honorable Speaker, that food security is very important, and it should not be compromised. And sometimes when farmers are not aware of climate change, they can find themselves in a very precarious situation where they're not able to produce food even for the year, even for themselves and for their family, Honorable Speaker. A research has been made, and through the research, it comes out clearly that when it comes to production of maize, by the year 2050, it will actually, come down by about 24%, Honorable Speaker. So there's need to have lessons. There's need to educate, learners from an early age on how to improve food security, on the cautionary measures to be put in place, Honorable Speaker, in the event of climate change. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to climate change, sometimes it comes with a lot of pains. We have seen on the media very many times when in floody areas, when the rain pour, and people are not expecting the floods. We have seen many times times families being shifted from the floody areas and not knowing where to take them, Honorable Speaker. But in the event that these families were enlightened and they were aware of climate change, they would shift in good time, even before the floods, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I have to say that this is no mean motion, Honorable Speaker. This is no mean motion that Senator Halake is asking that this climate change should be part of the school curriculum. And I want to add, Honorable Speaker, it needs to really be emphasized from colleges, universities, so that climate change becomes a mandatory unit in all the colleges, teacher colleges, Honorable Speaker. Just the way I keep saying that when it comes to sign language, it needs to be mandatory. An aspect of special education should be mandatory in these colleges, so that by the time graduates are being given to the society, they are actually aware about people with disabilities. They are actually a mainstreamed kind of people, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that I've seen very pathetic situations sometimes, and I've sympathized with farmers. There are times when farmers are caught unawares. They don't know how the climate will be, and they do their planting as usual. But when they do their planting, you find that worms are eating the seeds and all that. So they end up, going through very harsh economic conditions. Like they've already, tilled their land, they paid money. They've already planted, they paid money. They've already used fertilizer, they paid money. Then at the end of the day, you find caterpillars, the caterpillars pouncing on the plantains because they are running away from the harsh weather and they're looking for where to hide, and even caterpillars. So you can imagine the pains that farmers go through, Honorable Speaker. But if there are mechanisms of teaching farmers of this climate change and how they can protect themselves, it can be very good, Honorable Speaker. And also, Honorable Speaker, when it comes to farming, our farmers, especially predominantly, rely on rain-fed water, so that they can do their planting. But if there are teachings, good teachings, and the government pumps in also money in this education, then it will be possible for farmers to know that you can irrigate your land, and they need to be helped to irrigate the land, which means that when they're irrigating the land, Honorable Speaker, the county governments need to come in, Honorable Speaker. In the yearly plan, they need to have disaster management funds. And this disaster can be disaster predominantly for farmers, to cushion farmers, Honorable Speaker, so that in the event of such a disaster that the processes are not doing well, then the county government can even come in. It can even do some insurance for farmers. Just in the event that maize is not doing well, the plantings are not doing well, then they actually can be compensated for the loss, Honorable Speaker, because if they're indemnified, then they will actually be positive and see that the government, the county governments are keen in supporting them, Honorable Speaker. So I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that this is a very good motion that should actually see light at the end of the day. And not only light, Honorable Speaker, I want to tell Senator Halake to ensure that even though the time frame is very minimal, to come up with a bill that will speak on this, that will ensure that climate change is part of and a prerequisite in our colleges, in our universities, and in the curriculum. Because if it starts from there, then it will do well. But if it's just in ECD or in the school curriculum, somebody else can parrot that thing, and it will not be successful. But when it comes to teaching, it's such pedagogical issues should be carried out by universities. Pedagogical issues should actually be taken with the seriousness that they deserve, Honorable Speaker. And what Senator Halake is bringing here is pedagogical issues with regard to climate change. I support, Honorable Speaker. I second.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question, which is that aware that it is important that both the current and future generation are better equipped to address the problem of climate change, and this can be accomplished by using appropriate instructional strategies such as integrating climate education into the syllabus to assist students in improving their understanding of climate change and in acquiring the essential skills to reduce its effects. Acknowledging that education is crucial to promote climate action as it helps individuals understand and address the impacts of climate crisis, empowering them with the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes needed to act as agents of change, hence protect the environment and take action by crafting community-level solutions. Cognizant of the fact the Constitution of Kenya in Article 42 provides for the right to a clean and healthy environment for every Kenyan, which includes the right to have the environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations. Further noting that climate change is a global nightmare with consequences that are already quite visible and should be a priority for our education curriculum in accordance to Article 12 of the Paris Agreement, which imposes the enhancement of climate change education, training, public awareness, public participation, and public access to information. Now, therefore, the Senate calls upon the Council of Governors, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, to 1. Integrate climate education in the school curriculum in all counties to equip all schools-going children, and 2. Equip teachers and administrators with the necessary information and training skills to teach climate in schools. Senator Irongo Kangata.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, I rise to express some reservation to this motion. Mr. Speaker, I agree that indeed there's a problem of climate change in this world. There is scientific consensus on matters climate change. So many articles have been published in peer-reviewed journals, highly ranked, which indeed affirm that the climate is changing. Mr. Speaker, it's also not in doubt that the chief reason why the climate is changing, it is because of human activities. And therefore, I agree that we need to educate our children on mechanisms on how to address the problem of climate change in this republic. But let me now express why I have reservations to this motion. First, I will start by expressing my little bit reservation to the entire climate change advocacy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 80% of people who cause climate change, they are not in global south. They are either in global north, that is the Europe and America, and now we have that problem being caused by China. Therefore, the carbon footprint of Africans is almost zero. Therefore, ideally, the people who should be telling us or be explaining to us why they have caused climate to change are the Europeans and the Japanese and the Chinese, not Africans. Therefore, I wish this problem is better remedied by the people who have caused climate change, which is the Westerners. Allow me to finish, Mr. Speaker.
What is it, Senator Abshir Harake?
Mr. Speaker, as much as I would welcome any reservations, is it in order for the Honorable Senator to mislead our nation that climate change is not an African problem, yet as much as it's caused elsewhere, and we don't even have the scientific facts of the contributions of the footprints, that we should not be preventing it before we become part of the problems? Is that really what, is that in order to just mislead and say that it's a Chinese problem and therefore we Africans should not be doing anything about it? Yet it affects us more than it does affect the people that caused it anyway. So does that absolve us of the opportunity to do something about it? Is this kinds of misleading information on the floor of the House in order at all, Mr. Speaker?
What is it, Senator Gertrude Musurove?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also have a point of order on what Senator Moranga is bringing on the floor of this House, and I have a lot of respect for Senator Kangata. Is it in order for him actually to come and make statements that are truly not genuine on the floor of this House? Yet we have seen many times so many families afflicted by flood and losing many lives. Yet we have seen many farmers crying that their crops have been eaten by caterpillars and insects that have actually affected them. Is it in order for him to come up with information that is misleading?
I have heard the 2 points of order, but the truth of the matter is Senator Kangata first did agree with you. He was just putting his reservation. I think the best thing, you'd have allowed him first to finish, then you can.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, indeed, as you have correctly made a finding, mine was just my exposition. They will definitely have their time to respond. And I agree that there is a problem of climate change. There's no doubt about it. But the question I'm asking is, first, who has caused climate change in this world? What is the carbon footprints of the global south, particularly the sub-Saharan Africa? It's very, very minimal. If you can Google, you can look for what we call articles in peer-reviewed journals, which indicate clearly what is the carbon footprints in Africa. You see, Mr. Speaker, what causes climate change, according to scientists, is what we call highly industrialized societies. Those that have huge industrial base, those that produce things like oil, those that produce things, countries with many cars. So when you compare Africa and you compare Europe, definitely it goes without saying that our footprint is very, very negligible. And one of the problems I do have on the entire climate change discourse is its failure to compel those people who advance by damaging the environment to pay those of us who are yet to develop. Because, by the way, some of the interventions that may be proposed so that we remedy or mitigate the problem of climate change may hinder our progress, Mr. Speaker. Let me give you a good example. There was a proposal in Lamu that we build what we call a coal plant. That proposal was torpedoed on the basis that it's going to damage the environment, which is true, and I agree. But remember, how many coal plants do we have in China? How many coal plants do we have in Europe? How many coal plants do we have in Australia? Australia is one of the most developed societies in this world. Its GDP per capita is almost $50,000 per person. The Kenyan GDP per capita is about $2,000 per annum per person. So compare that level of development. Then you find in Australia they have coals. They have not stopped their coal industry. But here in Africa, we've been told, no, don't dare put up a coal plant because you are going to damage the environment. So that then means you have been burdened by these so-called measures to mitigate climate change. You can't move. You can't create employment. Mr. Speaker, sir, our number one problem in this society, from where I sit, is unemployment. When you have massive number of young people who do not have employment. And we need to industrialize. We need to create factories so that we can give our young people an opportunity to work. But now, we are not being told, no, don't dare establish these factories, don't dare establish these entities, because you are going to pollute the environment. You are going to contribute to climate change. Okay, there are alternatives. I agree, there are alternatives to some of those things that used to be done before. One of the examples, Mr. Speaker, sir, of measures to mitigate against climate change is to introduce things like clean energy. I am aware of that. Wind energy, solar energy. You can even have what we call electric motor vehicles. But it is settled, Mr. Speaker, sir, those alternative measures are very, very expensive. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you go to European countries, very few countries have been able to
Senator, what is it, Senator Halake?
Mr. Speaker, you have a responsibility to ensure that this House has integrity. To say what is right is also safeguarded. As much as we have, we can say whatever we want. There are things we can say on podiums and on the campaign trail, but here we have a responsibility to be truthful. As we speak now, it's not true that renewables are not...
Senator Halake,
yes.
Are you standing to inform Senator Kangata?
Yes, I am. And I was getting there.
I don't want to be
informed. It's a point of order. It's point of order, Mr. Speaker. I have a right to a point of order. The point of order is...
Can you cite which article? Which...
Senator Kangata, take your seat.
Thank you.
Senator Halake, proceed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I will repeat again. It is not in order, is it in order for the Honorable Senator to mislead this country that renewables are very expensive? It is not true. Renewables in many cases are in fact, because they are available without even having to be harnessed. The sun, the water, the gas, much cheaper than per kilowatt than even what is got from fossil fuels. It is not true. Scientifically, it has been proven. It is something that we should not now mislead because we want to sabotage the whole sustainability issue. It is much cheaper.
So when you say it's much cheaper, you're comparing with power?
Renewable energy from fossil fuels, renewable energy from the sun is much cheaper than energy from the fossil fuels, and he knows it. So to mislead is not right. And even in our own country, we have reduced the taxation on renewables, therefore making it very competitive. So to say that because we did not do the coal in Lamu, that we will never develop is not true. And our number one creator of unemployment is not the renewable energy, because we don't have energy. It's because of the corruption that persists. So let's just say the truth and shame the devil.
Senator Kangata, when you say they are very expensive, you're comparing to what? So that we can tell what is expensive and what's not expensive. Senator Gertrude Msurve?
No, they are debating.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just on a point of order, I would like Honorable Senator Kangata, my good friend, to actually stick to, we are looking at climate change as being brought in the curriculum, and I would like to inform Senator Kangata as a scholar that information is power only if it is shared. And when it comes to climate change, there are two causes. It could be changes in the cycle, or it could be human activities, which is right. If we see it, we have evidence every other day of climate change affecting farmers. Thank you.
Senator Kangata, proceed. And
yeah,
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what my colleagues have said is very good, and I want to encourage them. Yeah, you see the attempt to take us to what we used to call the state of nature, when we used to live in the trees, is a very good thing. Yeah, when there were no cars, there were no factories, it was a very good life. And if maybe this endeavor of climate change will take us back to the state of nature, I support is a very good idea. But as to whether we cannot do that under the current circumstances, I am not so sure, Mr. Speaker. I am not so sure. Mr. Speaker, you see, when ideas come from the West, from those our brothers in America, in Western Europe, we must, as parliamentarians, interrogate those ideas. You know, they can afford to put what we call wind energy, solar energy. They can afford to do it. Because remember, they are not struggling with the basics of life. They live in a very comfortable world. But ours here is a very poor country that is really, really struggling to create employment for the young people. And by the way, if one can be able to show me evidence of a country that has been able to transit, into what we call zero carbon emission strategy, I will support without the cost to the environment, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Kangata,
yeah.
Are you aware that we are signatory to Paris Agreement? Are you aware?
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, sir, even if we have signed those so-called declarations under what we call the Law of Treaties Act, all those conventions, for them to have the force of law, have to be brought before the National Assembly for ratification, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is provided for under Article 2, Sub-Article 6 of the Constitution. If I was a member of the National Assembly, personally, I would have put a reservation to the ratification of those international treaties which would make us, as a country, not be able to create employment. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, sir, when you close a factory that is creating millions of jobs to the young people on the basis of environment, and you have not provided an alternative mechanism through which those young people are going to find employment, I think you are doing disservice to this Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Western world, the Chinese, the Japanese, what did they do? They followed a certain trajectory, they developed. Then we are being told, no, don't follow this path. It is destructive. I agree, it is a very destructive path. But what is the compensation mechanism? I strongly believe, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is for the Europeans, it's for the Americans to give us a package to support our climate endeavor. That's my view, that's my thesis. Yes, I agree. The climate is changing, but it has been caused by the Europeans. And if they don't want us to follow the path they created, then they need to compensate us. Otherwise, we have to open and establish coal plants. We have to continue having factories. But if they were to pay us, in fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is an international principle, an environmental law that is called polluters pay. So it is them to pay us, so that we don't establish those so-called polluting factories. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is also something called carbon trading. The idea that was established in the international fora was the countries like us which are poor, they are going to be paid some money, particularly when they plant things like trees, to give them incentives not to follow the path, the industrial path that was used by the European to develop. That carbon trading mechanism is zero. It doesn't function. We don't obtain anything out of that mechanism. It is therefore my strong view that we need to push the so-called developed world to respect and enhance effectiveness of the carbon trading mechanism. I say that, Mr. Speaker, sir, because I come from Murang'a County. Murang'a County has the largest portion of Abadea's forest. Almost 80% of Abadea forest is in Murang'a County. 80% of water that is drunk in Nairobi comes from Murang'a County. We do not get even a single shilling out of it. There is something called abstraction fees. Abstraction fees mean any company that is drawing water out of a natural resource, that money should be paid to a national government entity called WARMA, which does not plant those trees. I strongly believe that money should be coming to Murang'a County government so that we replant trees. You guys in Nairobi continue drinking Murang'a water. Otherwise, we have no option but not to protect that Abadeas forest. So we need an incentive. So my thesis is this: whatever education that is going to be taught to our children as per proposed motion must include several things. Number one, a critical appraisal of the current climate change policy. Let us not just adopt ideas we see on TV, ideas we see the Westerners when they call workshops in Nairobi activists. No, they have not prosecuted the African case in this cause called climate change. They have not. It is we may, without knowing, be bringing what we call burdens of development on African society. We may, as a result of this endeavor, continue being poor because we'll be told, no, you can't establish a factory. It's going to create climate change. Those are burdens. If there is evidence our factories cause climate change, we need to be paid off so that we don't establish them. Otherwise, I'm telling you, Mr. Speaker, sir, we will bypass a certain industrial phase on the basis we want to protect the environment. It is the Europeans to pay us. It is the Americans to pay us. It is the Chinese to pay us. It is the Japanese to pay us. It is the Koreans who should be paying the Africans for these things they have caused this world. It is something, they cost it. We are bearing the greatest burden. Now we are being told we help them to curb it at a cost which is not being footed by those people who originally caused climate change. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I respect my colleagues who hold a different view. I understand them. I respect them. But I am only urging them to look at
Senator Kangata, what you have said is, from where I see it, is very true. What would stop it, what you are saying, to be put in the curriculum, what you are saying? Because it can be put in the curriculum so that the student can be knowing they, as Kenyans, we are supposed to be paid.
No, you are right. In fact, that's why I say I support the motion.
Okay.
But I have said I am putting some reservation. The way climate change education is currently structured, it has failed to bring a certain angle, the burden of the entire climate change mitigation endeavor. That is my thesis. I'm saying yes, please continue. It's a very good motion, but put a critical appraisal of the entire current climate change endeavor. I support the motion, Mr. Speaker, so I didn't say I am opposing it, but I'm saying there's a voice that is never heard in the entire debate about climate change, and the voice is the cost those Westerners have caused on Africans, the cost they have refused to pay us so that we don't bear the greatest burden of climate change mitigation. Mr. Speaker, sir, if, as my colleague has said, that the remedies for climate change are very cheap, that's okay. If they are cheap, Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, market forces will compel rational business people to adopt them. You know, the market forces operates under the principle called the hidden hand of market. And they will definitely go for that which is cheap, that which is rational. So therefore, if, let's say, for instance, establishing a power plant that is powered by wind is cheaper than establishing a power plant that is powered by coal, so be it. That will definitely, it makes sense. There's no reason why you should go for a coal. Yeah? And I have no doubt the market forces will definitely follow that which is rational, that which is cheap. But my point, if it was to be expensive, and I've given an example, when I saw a whole factory, a whole entity being closed on the basis of it will interfere with the environment in cost, I said, okay, why can't we look at the angle of unemployment, which currently this country, for me, I think is a national disaster. We must, as a country, put jobs creation endeavors as our number one priority. The rest is, from where I sit, subsidiary. I will rest my exposition with this. Any factory that may want to establish anything in Murang'a, it's welcome. Ours is an industrial paradise. Murang'a will not be encumbered by environmental regulations, as of course we will have to follow the law, which is there, the so-called MCA, that is Environmental Management and Coordination Act, but we are pro-business. We want to assure investors out there that as we care more about creation of jobs than any other consideration. Those who have caused damage to the environment, they should be the first one to be thinking about the remedies of climate change, as our number one priority is creation of jobs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I support with those reservations.
Thank you, Senator Kangata. Senator Mudhama Agnes Kavindu. Senator Kasanga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this motion by Senator Habshiro Alake on integrating climate education into school curriculum at all levels. Mr. Speaker, let me celebrate Senator Halake again, because she has been such a champion for climate. And in fact, I keep saying when the committees were shuffled, she was removed from the Environment Committee, and we really miss her for that, because she was quite a champion of environment. Without a doubt, climate change is a big conversation. I was privileged this year to attend the COP26 at Glasgow. And it was interesting watching, different jurisdictions trying to push each other into ratifying, the timelines into which we must make climate change action, more prominent in our different jurisdictions. It was very interesting, Mr. Speaker. And I think here in our country today, you cannot understate the effects of climate change. And whereas we talk about, we talk about many things. Just now when we were talking about culture and the importance of eating the right food for the purpose of our mental wellness or our general body wellness, then the conversation of climate change must come in. Do we realize what climate change is doing to the produce that we produce, and the changes then that have to be done to our production, the skills that then we need to impact on our people, so that then we can, we can mitigate these effects of climate change. This, it's a crisis. The climate change now is a big crisis. And the fact remains that our cycles of weather have changed. So again, people need to understand and to be schooled on then what do you then grow that you can eat, that can be your sustenance. Even though we shall be looking up to, large scale production of, say, food, for the purposes of our economy and growing our economy, but for subsistence, are we having enough conversations or capacity building of our people so that they can know then what to grow within the changing climate conditions that are there? And I do agree, our children need to be included in this conversation. I know there are certain schools that, try very much to speak to it, but largely our curriculums need to adopt it as a constant, so that our children, as they grow, they are fully equipped towards how to mitigate climate change and also how to adapt to the new climate changes that are there and how to embrace them. And Mr. Speaker, I just have to say that there's a lot to do when it comes to capacity building towards climate change. Again, today at the People's Dialogue, somebody brought up the conversation about potato farming because of that big debate that happened when one of the companies, the international company's food chain, KFC, announced that there's not enough potatoes in the country. And, Kenyans were up in arms, not believing it and not quite understanding really what is the issue. But when the conversation was finally put on the table and it was made clear to us that there's a level of capacity building that we have to, bring our farmers to so that they can grow in such a scale that then these international companies and other food chains can then, buy from them directly, then you realize there's a big gap. There's a big gap, and there's a lot more that we need to do to empower ourselves as citizens and to empower, our farmers so that they can reach to that level where they can compete on a global stage. And Mr. Speaker, this also is a question of how we are adapting to climate change. What are the things then in our capacity, in our environment here in Kenya, should we be telling our farmers or should we be pushing our farmers then to do when it comes to climate change? Now, we've had conversations at committee, and one of the petitions that came earlier in this term was a very interesting petition that came from Kajiado, from Magadi, and there's a lot of silt that is going into Magadi. And the silt, of course, comes from, erosion that is coming from the farms around. And what has happened is that because, of course, again, of climate change and the changing rain patterns, you find that, grazing is done until the ground is absolutely bare, and there's not enough, say, afforestation that is being done, or moving cattle. I think there's a way you can graze in an orderly, or rather in a designed manner, to allow some earth to regenerate, and things like that. And they brought that petition, and the petition was actually pushing towards the fact that there's infrastructure that was being built nearby, and it was that earth of the infrastructure that was then being carried away when it rains into silt into the lake, and therefore affecting the great resource that Lake Magadi is. But after a lot of conversation with the county ECCs of agriculture in Kajiado, there was then the conversation of what are we doing, what capacity building are we doing to our farmers and our citizens so that they can learn to regenerate the earth, or what other conversations can we bring about economic activities that then don't deplete the earth to the level that it is, considering our rain patterns have changed. So you can see the kind of conversations that need to happen around climate change. They are in-depth, they are wide, and it is true what Senator Halake is saying. We have to integrate climate education into the school curriculum and equip our children. Then our teachers too need to be equipped. It's the same thing that we keep saying, that there's so much information that needs to be fed to our children so that as they grow, they are fully, seized of the environment and the constant changing environment that we live in today. It's bad enough that we are in such a modern society that everything is always moving too fast. The technology has made everything move way too fast. But there's also just the basics that we need our people to be able to move along with, and that is matters of climate. And really, if we don't handle climate change, with, the intent that we need to handle it with, then we shall really, really be disenfranchising ourselves as a citizenry. If we don't learn how to adapt, and if we don't learn how to make sure the next generation is also fully seized of the issues that need to be to be done. And Mr. Speaker, let's just talk a little bit about afforestation. We keep talking about forests. In fact, this Senate here, we've moved motions about, forests, planting trees, forest associations, and things like that. And it's still interesting, even when you fly out around the country, you see still a lot of barrenness and a lot of bareness. And in as much as, there are all these organizations in the counties that are planting trees. Some counties have active tree planting schemes and policies. There's still a lot more that needs to be done. In fact, the intent with which we should be planting trees should be such that we should be speaking trees on a constant basis. Morning, noon, and night. Everyone should have, In fact, maybe one day we should have a policy that says you should be able to identify how many trees you have as a person that can be, attached to you. So that every child, every human being who lives here in Kenya can say, these are the trees that I have. Because we are not planting enough trees. And as long as we are having conversations of climate change, then trees must be a constant conversation, and our children need to be seized of the importance of some of these things. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Senator Halake for this, and Senator, continue being a champion of climate. You always have been. Keep at it, and I support the motion, and I hope it sees the light of day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Agnes Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to, first of all, congratulate Senator Halake for this motion, which is very timely and very important because we are truly living in days when the climate change is affecting the whole world. Mr. Speaker, I would support this motion because it is very important to prepare our future generations, as in how they will be prepared and be ready to face the climate change that is there globally. It is actually a global nightmare. And Mr. Speaker, before, when I was growing up, we could tell when the rains will rain. And even if it extended, maybe it extended for only 5 days or rained earlier 5 days than the time that it used to rain. The latter rains and then the former rains. And people could plant early in advance and wait for the rains because they were very sure that it could rain. These days, it is not the same. People are taking their time until they see it has rained, then they start planting, and that is why we have shortage of food. That is why we don't have food security. Mr. Speaker, I think it is very important for this climate education to be introduced to our schools in all levels, because if we talk of only colleges and universities, then our children will grow without knowing the meaning of the global change, and they will not be prepared. So if we start from all levels of education, they'll catch up and they'll grow knowing that it is important, and especially being taught on how to preserve the trees and everything that should be done to prevent the global climate change. Mr. Speaker, I've seen a certain bishop in Yatta who God put in him just to prepare for people, because in Yatta there was a lot of drought. There is even today, and that is why I want our water to be returned to Machakos. The declassification of the water of Machakos, I want it restored back because there is a lot of drought up to today. And so he took the initiative of showing the local communities on how to plant and how to just dig small ponds with their hands, so that when it rains they can store the water, and after the rains are gone, they can continue planting. And this has really helped the Yatta people. He calls it Operation Molio Out, because they used to be given a lot of molio, food, to be helped with food to eat. We call it molio in Kikamba. So he came with an idea of Operational Molio Out. And for sure, it is molio out in Yatta. And many people are coming to learn from his farm, even from outside Kenya. Even UN people go to his place to learn how, because this climate change is a global thing, and it is all over, and people must prepare. So if our children or our students or our future generation is prepared in advance, they'll be able to do what is right, and they'll be prepared psychologically and even physically. They can be prepared to plant the foods that can be harvested even without much rains. Mr. Speaker, So I want to comment and say that what Kangata was talking about is also very important, and he should bring a motion to this House so that we can pursue it, or it can be included in this program. But in this program, I don't think what he's talking about will help much, because he's talking of compensation. Compensation, he can bring a motion and we debate it, and it is followed in the proper channel, but not through this. This should just go the way Senator Alake has brought it.
What is it, Senator Gertrude Musurve?
I would like to inform Senator Machakos that what Senator
Kavindu, do you want to be informed?
Thank you. I would like to inform Senator Kavindu that what Senator Kangata was bringing forth on this House did not really deal on pedagogical issue, did not really deal on education. It was more of employment, it was more of financial. But when it comes to the motion of Senator Halake, it's purely pedagogical information and knowledge. Thank you. Senator Musuruve, but that is why I've said he should bring a motion to this House. So I think I'm totally informed of what he was talking about. And that is why I've said he should bring a motion. And this should go the way it is. I've just said that, Senator Musuruve. We know it is very important for our future generations to be prepared so that they can face the world like any other person. And so I commend you, and I say this motion is very important and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavindu. There being no any other requests, I call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply. And as I reply, I'd like to thank the senators who have contributed. Senator Musuruve, I'd like to thank her for seconding me and for being very passionate about everything education. And since this is an education that will put us into making sure that our future as a nation is a resilient future, a future as a nation that is looking at what it is that's affecting us, and that also that has a bearing on the existential question of, are we going to be there even? Forget about the economies and the employment and what have you, but if we're going to self-destruct, if we're going to, no matter who caused it, and 2 wrongs or 3 wrongs or 100 wrongs do not make a right, Mr. Speaker, as you know. So I'd like to thank her for making sure that she, as usual, and with her passion for education, has seconded this motion, and I take note of her mention of KICD involvement, as well as the involvement of universities and other higher institutions of higher learning, to ensure that this becomes a holistic approach to doing things, and not just, something that we do on one side of the education. That has been alluded to by Senator Mudama as well, who has also said it should be at all levels, and precisely that is what the motion is about. We'll make sure that at all levels, including at the ECD level, we're linking climate education. And she also linked climate education to agricultural activities and productivity, where then our farmers are then equipped with the necessary information and necessary know-how and skills to mitigate and to ensure that they're resilient when it comes to their farming and their productivity. Senator Kangata, I also thank Senator Kangata for his alternative view. He has supported the motion while with reservations. While the reservations, he has every right and constitutional right to his reservations. I felt they were a bit misleading, in the sense that we are talking about ensuring that our education system is current, is modern, and has equips our children with the modern skills and modern awareness of what is happening to them, and that they can make the joint and can make the link and line of sight to what is perhaps causing them the pain that they're going through at the moment. For instance, children in northern Kenya, children in Isiolo County, in Wajir County, who cannot get even the little rain that they used to get. Children in our pastoralists who are wondering why the rangelands are not regenerating at all, even with the same amount of rainfall. The pastoralists in my county that are wondering why the water is just running off with everything, and that every time they have to lose their animals, can at least understand where it's coming from and do something about it, or at least prepare for it and mitigate against it. Maybe sell the animals when you see that the rains are not coming. Senator Kavindu has just told us how the effect of climate change on rainfall patterns in Ukambani, for instance. These are real issues. These are not things that we're talking about because of activism. It is issues our people are going through. The rangelands in northern Kenya are not generating even with the same amount of rainfall. We have 10% forest cover. If we tell our children that 30% forest cover is the difference, that is what we're talking about. We're not talking about, and I know Senator Kangata talked about the coal plant that was shut down. It hadn't even been begun. There's something called stranded assets. Why are we as Africa going to go into things that have already become obsolete and deal with investments that will become obsolete in the next few months? Investments that perhaps even the technology transfer needs to come from that West that has made it obsolete, and be stuck with stranded assets in the name of creating coal plants around Africa now, when Africa is endowed with the best renewable energy of the sun, the wind, the water that we can have. So what all we're saying is, we don't have to follow the same trajectory as the West. Why don't we as Africans then decide coal is not our thing? We have sun, in fact, that is scorching us, and we're going to use that energy. We're going to harness that energy. It is not true, Mr. Speaker, that renewables are expensive. How can something so plentiful be so expensive if we actually focused on using it? How can something so plentiful be so remote from us? It's shining on us. When in the West, they get sun in certain places for 2 hours in a day, we get sun for almost 24 hours every day, and we know when it's coming, when it's going to go down. We can say that we may have lacked ideas, we've not lacked the natural resources. So it's not true, and that is what I would like to correct in this House, that natural resources are of necessity much more expensive. It's not true at all. It is not true, Mr. Speaker. And then we must also differentiate between the cause and effect of things. If the West caused it, the effect is on us. So what are we going to do to skill ourselves and to arm ourselves with the mitigation measures that is going to give us the resilience to survive? Or do we say because they caused it, we'll just lie down and die, and our animals will just die? And that pastoralists in northern Kenya will say, well, the Muzungu caused it, and therefore I'll just let my animals die. No, we're going to come to the bottom of why is our rangeland not regenerating? Why is the rainfall patterns changed? Why do I graze in this area in July usually, and this July there's nothing? We can't just sit and blame. We must be part of the solution, and this is what this motion is trying to do. It doesn't matter. It matters not at all that in Australia there are many coal mines. That's Australia. What about our country? And it's not true that the number one problem for Kenya is because we did not pursue fossil fuels, or that we are trying to, we're putting some climate education into our curriculum. We know it. Our number one problem is corruption. Let's deal with those things. Let's deal with the pilferage that 2 billion shillings in a day or in a month, I can't remember exactly what time frame was put, is being wasted in corruption. Let's not apportion blame where none exists at all. So, Mr. Speaker, I support the notion that we can start, and I congratulate the pastor that said we will be doing away with molio. It is through these kinds of things that we will do away with food donations and get the dignity of feeding our children and feeding ourselves, because we're taking action against the climate that is causing us problems, be they droughts, be they disasters of that nature. Mr. Speaker, and I thank which other senator spoke to this issue, Senator Kasanga, and for making sure that we are talking about, again, she's linked and made the dots to the mitigation measures that are being created for our farmers, especially in the dry areas, in the ASAL areas, and for linking the sustainability of our livelihoods and lives to the fact that we are climate competent. It matters not who is causing, but the effect is on us, and it's up to us to do something and be part of the solution. And therefore I reply and I thank everybody that contributed.
Thank you, honorable senators. I have determined that this matter does not affect county. I now put the question, which is that aware that it is important that both the current and future generations are better equipped to address the problem of climate change, and this can be accomplished by using appropriate instructional strategies such as integrating climate education into the syllabus to assist students in improving their understanding of climate change and acquiring the essential skills to reduce its effect. Acknowledging that education is crucial to promote climate action, as it helps individuals understand and address the impacts of climate crisis, empowering them with the knowledge, skills, values, and attitude needed to act as agents of change, hence protect the environment and take action by crafting community-level solutions. Cognizant of the fact that the Constitution of Kenya in Article 42 provides for the right to a clean and healthy environment for every Kenyan, which includes the right to have the environment protected from the benefit of present and future generations. Further noting that
Are you an aspiring candidate in the upcoming general elections? Do you want your agenda and manifesto to reach your voters effectively? At KBC, we have the most comprehensive and credible online platform that has profiles of all